All right, we are live on the YouTube, and joining me today is a YouTuber, a fearless defender of free speech, and someone people have very strong opinions about. It even says that in her Twitter bio. Blaire White, welcome to the Rubin Report.
Thank you for having me.
I can't believe we have not done this in person. We have never met in person before.
No, and we've tried like a million times. Not even just the show, but just like to hang out, we've tried.
We've tried for dinners, we've tried for coffee, we've tried other times to make this happen in person. All right, well, then there's a lot of pressure on us.
Yeah, for sure. It has to be good.
Are you feeling the pressure?
I'm fine.
I feel that pressure doesn't really affect you. It doesn't, I watch your videos, you strike me as someone that's clear in your thinking and you don't care what people think. I know that's sort of a cliche thing to say about people, but you really strike me as that.
Yeah, I mean, kind of just the way I've always been is, I care about how my immediate family thinks, how my boyfriend thinks, but when it comes to YouTube, I feel like you have to have that thick skin. So I've kind of just always had that.
Yeah.
I've been ready for it.
All right, so for people who know nothing about you, now we did do this once on Skype, and I don't want to just repeat everything that we did for an hour, but I think telling a little bit of your backstory is good, and then we can get to the stuff that you really like talking about. So for the people that just have no idea who you are or know nothing about your background, who is Blaire White?
Blaire White is a YouTuber. I do social and political commentary, and I guess I'm known for some inflammatory videos, covering controversial topics, that kind of a thing. But at the end of the day, I'm just having fun with it, you know what I mean? Yeah. Just living, and I'm doing different kind of content lately. I'm doing more lifestyle stuff, more vlogs, more stuff about me, because, YouTube's kind of changing how it is right now. Kind of all the rules are changing.
Is there some stuff going on YouTube? Could that be a thing?
Absolutely. It's getting harder and harder to do social and political commentary for sure. I mean, you know the struggle. I mean, my channel luckily hasn't been hit as hard as a lot of other people that I'm friends with. Whatever YouTubers I'm friends with. Yeah. But I'm feeling the pinch too. It's hard.
Yeah. It's kind of weird too. We were just saying before we started, it's like your titles of your videos, I mean, you do what you want to do. You title things the way you want to title them. The thumbnails that you put up are the way you want to do it. I try to play, I think, a little more by the traditional YouTube rules, but clearly there doesn't seem to be an answer there.
That's what's crazy is you're playing by the rules and you're getting in trouble for it, and I'm kind of breaking them and I'm fine. Yeah. But knock on wood.
Knock on wood. By the way, I should mention on the wide shot, you might be able to see Emma is in studio today. This is our first ever live shoot with Emma in studio. Emma, you going to say hi? Yeah, Emma's in studio. She was sitting here right before we started, and you were like, "Oh, is the dog going to stay?"
Yeah, I said keep her.
And then you said keep her. So Emma's hanging. If she starts really,
she's saying hi.
She's saying hi. All right, but let's not get too distracted by that. All right. So I don't want to only talk about trans issues, obviously, and I'm sure at some level you've got to be tired of talking about them in certain ways.
Not really, not completely. I mean, it's still interesting stuff. I mean, there's still so much of it is still a huge debate, and so much of the science is still, not out. So I guess it gets a little old sometimes, but I'm in the mood for it today. If you want.
All right, then let's do it. So let's just do a couple of minutes on just your own journey.
Okay.
When did you realize that you were trans?
Well, I realized I was different when I was very young, when I was probably in kindergarten or so. Didn't really relate to boys in my class, didn't really relate to the girls either, but I didn't really have the language to describe what that meant until I was probably a little older, maybe 15, 16. And even then I went through a huge denial phase and where I didn't do anything about it, but I wanted to. It wasn't until about age 20 when I had the means just within myself as an adult to kind of, take my life into my own hands and make the changes I wanted.
Yeah, so I read an interesting thing this morning when I was doing some research on you that when you were realizing this around 15, 16, your father passed away from cancer when you were 18, and that actually delayed your transition because you didn't want your mom to have to deal with losing two people in her life, so to speak. That's deep. Fascinating. I mean, that's deep.
Yeah, my dad passed away when I was 19 of cancer. It was very, very unexpected. And when someone passes away, especially, an immediate family member, it kind of halts your life regardless, no matter what you're doing. So, of course, my transition was definitely, put on the back burner because I didn't really want to put my mom through losing her husband and then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, you're going to lose your son too. And, she didn't lose me, but it was just a huge change. And when someone dies, it's already a huge change. So I kind of took that into account.
Yeah. Did your mom know that you were at least identifying as trans at that point? Was it just the idea that you were trying to not talk to her about at that point, or was it actually the transition? You know what I mean? Like that you didn't want her to, it was the physical change that was going to be the real loss here.
I guess it was the physical change. It was, I mean, a lot goes into it. It's like a name change. It's like a pronoun change. It's everything. So it's kind of like, you know, the identity is kind of shifting. So it was kind of everything. I just didn't want her to have to deal with it. It was just so much already she was going through.
Yeah. So as someone that's gone through the transition, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the surgeries that you've had recently, and I watched your videos, and you were talking about some of the pain and the experience of going through this stuff that you couldn't have imagined had you not done it. What do you make of how much we talk about trans issues now? Like, you know, when there's this whole LGBTQ thing, and we did the gay rights thing for a couple of years, and gay people got equality, which is the whole point. We're supposed to have equal opportunity, okay? That we've sort of shifted the discussion now to trans people. Do you view that as good, bad, indifferent?
It's a double-sided sword, because I feel like when I look back, you know, on the existence of trans people, maybe just in the past decade, certain things have gotten better, but certain things have gotten worse. More people are more involved in the conversation, and so there's just a lot of unnecessary stuff flying around, and so it's almost like it was easier and people didn't really know about it. Because I mean, I think everyone always knew, like, oh, there are some people who, you know, change their bodies or whatever. But now that everyone's so involved in the debate, there's just so much back and forth that's unnecessary. Like the bathroom thing, that's unnecessary to be, for the most part, you know.
Meaning what? So what's your take on the bathroom thing?
Well, it's just like, it's not real life. Like, I don't like being expected to, like, suspend my knowledge of how the real world works to have these debates, because I've never had an issue using any bathroom I want. I just never have.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's about understanding people's concerns, but also being like, okay, it's not a real concern, or it's not that bad. You know, it's just so much unnecessary stuff.
Do you think maybe for you that's a little bit unique in the trans community because of the way you look? You know what I mean? So I know people talk about someone that's passable, or you're beautiful in this case. So it's like nobody's looking at you, I think, or maybe the most keen eye who's thinking about this all the time. You know what I mean? But I don't think so. I don't think anyone's looking at you and thinks.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that in this way, you don't have to think about that specific problem so much, because you are more. Is passable the right word?
I guess so.
I know you don't care about words that much in that regard.
I guess it's the right word.
Yeah.
I suppose it is. I suppose that if I was 6 feet tall or whatever, it wouldn't be as easy. You know what I mean? But at the same time, you know, a lot of people talk about rapes in the bathrooms and molestations in the bathrooms, and it's just not a thing. There's no facts to back it up. There's no statistics to back it up. So that part I get annoyed with. That's really the only part, though.
Yeah, it's one of those things that when we had that whole brouhaha about what happened, it was like, well, trans people have been going to the bathroom of their choice for all this time, and there didn't seem to be an issue. So now we've got the left, in this case, screaming about an issue that didn't exist. And then you do have
and you create an issue.
So now you've created an issue where, for me, as a small government guy, well, now you want the government to come in and tell, you know, cut funding for places that don't do this and that with the bathroom and all that. But there is a genuine group of other people, and in this case, they're more on the right, maybe a conservative Christian right or whatever that is, that do have some issue with trans people, right?
Absolutely. And you know what? I'm incredibly, as long as they are not putting their hands on me or cruel, I'm absolutely sympathetic to that, because I have those people in my family. Yeah. My mom's side of the family was definitely more on the liberal side, and they've been very, very accepting. My dad's side, it's been something different. You know, a lot of people on my dad's side of the family are more on the conservative side, which is fine. You know, I lean right as well. But when it comes to the trans thing, they didn't get it, especially at first. Yeah. And so for me, it was about learning to be patient with those people, which is why I feel like that kind of bleeds over to my online presence, is with those people, you know, I'm able to interact with them, and it's like, it's fine, you know?
Yeah, I love that, because that's what it's all about, right? Like, you took people who knew you as one thing, now know you as something else, and even if they struggled with it, or even if, you probably have some people that still struggle with it in your family, right? At some level, maybe?
Absolutely. There's still turmoil on that end. It's not crazy or extreme or anything, you know, it's not something I think about every day, but it's still there. And so, because, you know, I think that a lot of the times when it comes to trans people, they sort of have the wrong mindset when it comes to family. I mean, I can't judge every situation, but I feel like if you want someone to be patient and understand you and come to learn about you and your thoughts and your beliefs and who you are, you have to do the same. It's a two-way street. So a lot of trans people get caught up in, like, being very, very defensive, and, like, if you don't accept me on every single term, then you can't be in my life, which is sad because family is everything. You know,
Yeah.
you can't throw people away.
And I used to see that, before I was doing this in what seems like another life for me. I was on the LGBT channel on Sirius XM. I wanted to do politics, but I was gay, so they're like, "You'll do a gay show, gay guy." And
Right.
I was on that. And I would come across, or I'd interview a lot of times, that type of person who, gay people didn't have equal rights. I obviously wanted gay people to have equal rights. But that type of person who was so strident in removing all of these people from their lives, making it seem that they're all bigots and all of that stuff. And it's like, that's not how you change minds.
And that's the kind of advice a lot of the advocates have, gay advocates as well.
Yeah.
And it's very toxic because family is everything. You can't just throw people away.
Yeah.
You have to, it's meeting in the middle,
Do you see that as a interesting paradox of all this? That I agree with you. I think family and friends are far more important than what larger society is going to say about you, certainly what the government is going to say about you. Again, you want the equal rights. But there's like a certain strange thing there where they're trying to almost replace the family with some of the social justice stuff. Like that should be your new family because they know everything about you. Or the way they think you should be.
Absolutely. And I've talked about this on my channel, how when I was younger, like 15, 16, 17, I was very heavily involved in social justice circles and everything. Yeah. And there definitely is this aspect of like, this is your new group, this is your new tribe. And it's definitely, if your mom can't accept you, then you don't have a mom there anymore. You know what I mean? And it's very, very toxic. And it's like the worst thing to tell to someone when they're needing support beyond the superficial support of like political activists. Like that only goes so deep. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's wrong. For sure.
Tell me a little more about that. So in that time of your life, you're starting to have these realizations, or I guess you had them very young, but they were becoming more concrete, I suppose. And you were really in that SJW thing. I read something about how you had a list of words on your refrigerator that was it that you couldn't say or that people who came to your house couldn't say?
I didn't make it, but I had a roommate, and I was totally fine with it. But it was like a whiteboard on the refrigerator, a list of words you couldn't say in the house. And it was like stupid stuff. It was like terms like men's rights. Or it was like, I don't even remember. It was just all the things you would guess.
Right.
So that was my life for a while. And
were you, again, when you were in it at that time, did you so you really did feel it? Like you felt it was right?
I felt it. It felt like finding like a new purpose almost. Because at that time, like I said, that was when the realization that I was trans was really hitting hard. And so at that point, you feel powerless. You're at the beginning, you're like, how do I make this work? How do I live my life in the way that I want? And you meet a group of people who tell you that, every problem you have isn't your problem, but it's everyone else's problem. And then that's very intoxicating to hear at that stage if you're that confused or lost or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's almost like they prey on weaklings a lot. They prey on the smaller groups, the disenfranchised groups, and they suck them up and become a bigger group.
Right, which in your case is particularly interesting because now with someone that has the views that you have, and we'll get to some of those political views, and as you said, you lean slight right, they're not a huge fan of yours now.
No, I have dealt with so much for my YouTube channel, Dave, like stuff I don't even talk about.
Yeah.
So much stuff. Last summer, there was a huge run-in with Black Lives Matter. And a lot of the activists there obviously saw my videos on Black Lives Matter, and I was doxxed, my address was posted, people were tweeting me about coming to my house with guns, all kinds of stuff, which, it's crazy and it's online, but when it comes to that, you have to take it seriously.
Yeah.
So I was in talks with the FBI, and a girl got arrested, and my fans, I don't endorse it. I do not endorse it. But my fans swatted the Black Lives Matter activists, like sent, that's when you send, I guess, police to someone's house and say they're going to kill themselves or something, and they come in with guns. So, it's been really crazy, and I've lost a lot of friends over it. But it is worth it. YouTube has changed my life. I'm here. I would have never been here. You know what I mean? So it's all worth it, but there's been so much, just so much.
Yeah. Does it blow your mind how much of that online world thing, this, the doxing, the swatting, the fighting, how much of that, I think in the last couple of years especially, has sort of leaked into real life where suddenly now, if someone knows what your address is, they can find, or just any of that stuff, that attitude has now leaked into reality.
Yeah, and it's a crazy attitude. I mean, a lot of the stuff at the end of the day, I see on Twitter sometimes people getting doxxed. You ever see like viral tweets just going and someone's getting doxxed because they said the N-word or something? And it's like, okay, when you do that, you're not only affecting that person and putting them at risk, but it's like they might have kids, a wife, a mother, anyone in their household. You know what I mean? So it's crazy. It's like the most insane thing you can do to someone.
Yeah, we've
crazy.
sort of lost civility, right? I think one of the things I'm going to try to do this next year, I think I try to do it in general, is bring some civility back to some of this, because we need it.
You know, you might not believe me, but I'm trying that too. I really am.
I know you are, actually, because you've been having debates on your channel, and you go pretty deep with some people that you obviously disagree with, some people that you've been in public fights with and stuff like that, and you're doing it in a way that I think is civil.
Yeah, and the way I do all my channel and stuff is lately is I try to do debates, and especially just on the daily, I mostly only watch political content that I disagree with, honestly. I don't really turn on, fellow YouTubers that do the same thing as me, or, news channels that kind of mirror my views or whatever. It's all other stuff. That's more interesting to me, because you learn more about your own views and someone else's views, and people don't stay caricatures.
Yeah.
People become people, and ideas become more tangible and something you can actually argue against, rather than just being incendiary or whatever, which has been kind of my style in the past, but try new things.
Yeah. All right. So then, as someone who is now watching stuff that you don't agree with, so now that means you're really watching a lot of the diversity stuff, probably,
I
the
watched The
SJW
View.
stuff and all that. What's that?
I watched The View.
You watch The View?
Which is crazy.
I don't watch it anymore, but that 1 year where Elizabeth Hasselbeck and Rosie were getting into fights,
so good.
it was incredible television. So and when Elizabeth left, I think it basically it took a hit to the knee of the show. But I have no problem with that show I haven't watched it lately.
Yeah,
but
it's very, very liberal. They had an interview.
That's why they needed Elizabeth.
Right, you needed the balance. You can't just have the most conservative person they have on there now is a libertarian, and it's that's fine. But when everyone else is super far left, you have to have a balance. But yeah, I like watching it because I learn more about myself through that.
Yeah. So as someone that is watching some of that stuff now and is now debating some of these people, what was the moment for you that political thing switched? Not just the personal part that was obvious, you were going through things, but that moment that the ideas, how they relate to politics and just sort of a worldview.
It was just becoming an adult, honestly. It was learning to take accountability for myself and not rely on an ideology that told me that I was powerless. It was just growing older, which is crazy when I see 40-year-old, activists, which, fight for what you believe in. But some of these people have the mindsets of teenagers. It's crazy, just trying to push accountability on other people.
Yeah.
It's not the best way to be.
Did any of your friends that you were in at that time, any of them, keep you around after that? Or did they all just, was it that's it?
Some, but the ones that stayed were the more, centered people and not the crazy activists. Those all dropped me like that, which is fine, I look at where they are all in life and I don't mind being away from it.
You did that very civilly. It was a dig.
I'm being nicer, Dave.
It was very civil. That was very impressive. How old were you when you first started doing the YouTube thing?
22.
22.
And I'm almost 24. Turning 24 in 2 days.
Jeez. Well, happy birthday in advance. But only barely 2 years that you've been doing the YouTube thing. I mean, that's a life changer, right? That's a transition of another sort, right? Going to the public person thing.
Absolutely. YouTube has changed my life, opened up so many doors I never thought would be opened. I've met so many amazing people through YouTube. So I believe in YouTube. Despite all the crazy things happening right now, I believe in YouTube. I think it's an amazing platform, and I will stick with it. I might switch to other platforms as well. Not switch, but, do stuff elsewhere.
Yeah.
But YouTube will always be, at least I hope, my bread and butter,
I feel exactly the same way. Well said. All right, so let's talk about just some of the issues and the stuff that sometimes gets you in hot water and some of the things that you, as I said at the beginning, I consider you one of the people that's a fearless defender of free speech. So first off, so you agree that trans is a mental disorder, correct?
Yeah, more specifically, gender dysphoria is a mental disorder. I mean, that's just recognized in the DSM. So that's just citing from the DSM.
So
and
can
I'm
you
fine
just
with
explain,
that.
just for the absolute layman, we'll just do some one-on-one stuff. So gender dysphoria is?
Gender dysphoria is basically feeling a strong disconnect with your gender and gender roles that you're expected to fill, being that gender. And it causes a lot of distress, and it's very difficult. It's it's alleviated a lot for me in the past year or so. But when it was hitting me the hardest, it's so hard to deal with. It's like depression times 5. It's horrible.
Yeah.
So it's a mental disorder, which is fine for me to admit because people have disorder, people have anxiety, people have depression, people have, whatever. So it's not this crazy inflammatory thing for me to say, at least I think, but a lot of other people feel differently.
Yeah. Do you watch the show Transparent by any chance?
No, I don't.
So one of the interesting things, I just watched it just in the last couple months, and without getting into any plot stuff, one of the most interesting things to me is that the father's transitioning, and really the story doesn't become about the father, it becomes about all the people around him, the family around him. And there's a moment where he becomes friends with a trans woman who basically is like, you're gonna lose everyone around you. And that, he hasn't yet in the show, I don't know which way they're gonna go with it. But that also must be a part of the struggle after, right? It sounds like it's been pretty okay for you, but for a lot of other trans people, that just other people just, they can't, even if they want to accept, they just can't get there for whatever reason.
Yeah, there are people that can't get there. It's been, in comparison to a lot of other people, relatively easy for me. Like, I have a huge family, and 98% of them are fine with it. But it is hard, like gender dysphoria itself. You have this like very toxic view of yourself, and it's very hard to just exist and just go to the store and just be yourself. It's kind of hard to explain to someone who would never experience it. You know what I mean? But it's basically feeling very uncomfortable in your body, like to the extreme. So to top that with like familial, like not being accepting, it's bad.
Yeah. Do you think there's a risk or any issue with LGBTQT that I think in that, like, so for me as a gay man, I don't have any innate understanding of what it's like to be trans that a straight man wouldn't have.
Oh, because it's like sexuality and then gender identity. It's
right. So like just inherently, I don't somehow know something more about you than if I happen to be straight or if there was a straight guy sitting next to me. Do you think that by lumping all these things together, there's some kind of risk there? Like, I think maybe perhaps I have a little more empathy built into me because I was in the closet and struggled and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, we have certain lines of like, similarities, but it is very different. I think in the beginning it was necessary, you know what I mean? Like when there was less of an understanding of what trans was, it kind of was treated like another, these are the queer people, and this was that was their tribe.
Yeah.
And so in the beginning, in the 60s during the Stonewall riots, perhaps that was beneficial. Now, it is so different, and the politics are different, and the place that trans people are at and the place that gay people and bisexual people and lesbians are at is different. I still don't really know what queer means. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of words and a lot of letters. And,
yeah, I guess that's just like an umbrella, but then it's like LGBT is already an umbrella acronym. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I guess I don't think too much about it as far as like grouping them in and why it might be bad.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
One of the things I've seen you talk about is that you're against having young kids transition as early as seems to be happening more often. There was just a story this week about like a 14-year-old boy who transitioned, who now wants to detransition or whatever the exact phrase is.
Yeah.
And you've been very outspoken about that.
Absolutely. That's one of the, I don't consider myself some sort of like warrior or fighter, but if there's a fight in my channel or what I'm talking about, that's one of the things that I consider one of the biggest fights, because there really are no other trans people speaking out against it, at least that are like, in the public eye or whatever. So I'm definitely against children transitioning. I think that it's a horrible decision to let a child make a life-changing decision and decide to be sterile, because that is a consequence of transitioning so young. You can't have kids. And just the drugs that they go on, there's a lot of problematic things that go along with that. There's this show called I Am Jazz. It's on, I think, TLC or something. And it's about a 16-year-old trans girl. And she had been transitioning since she was probably like 5. Not medically around like 11 or 12. So she was put on puberty blockers, which is what you go on before hormones. She never went through testosterone or male puberty. And because of that, it's kind of gnarly, but her genitals like never really developed. And so she can't even have the surgery to like become a woman and have a vagina, because she was on puberty blockers. And puberty blockers are hailed as like the most important thing to go on.
Yeah, wait, can you explain that a little further? Because I think that goes over a lot of people's heads. Like, she actually needs to undergo the proper surgery at the end, so to speak, she actually needs fully formed genitals, right?
The amount
male
of
genitals.
Yeah, it's so gnarly and it's like really graphic. But the amount of depth that you can have in the vagina is directly related to how long the penis is. So if you are on puberty blockers from the time you're 11 years old, you never develop. You basically have a micro penis, and you can never turn it into a vagina. It's just too small. So it's like there's problems, and the trans activists, for lack of better terms, completely gloss over it and make it seem like something that's not. And I don't like that. So I fight against that for sure.
Yeah, I know of the show, but I haven't been watching it. Are they addressing that as an issue? Like a legitimate...
They're going to like consultations on the show, and all these surgeons are saying, oh, we can't do it. And there's only so many surgeons that can do it. There's like, just like maybe a dozen in the US who even do that. So it's like, what are you going to do now?
Yeah, it's so interesting because it strikes me as something that's so consistent with the way you think of other things. Like, just because they're saying it, just because they're all saying, oh, let these kids on, it doesn't mean that even the facts, if you want to get to the end to truly transition, the facts don't line up with what's making you feel good. Yes, let kids do whatever they want and okay, all that stuff. But the actual medical reasons to not do it, from the amount that I understand that you're explaining to me, far would supersede what your feelings are about it.
Absolutely. Another huge problem is the activists always cite that, so many doctors are fine with it. And it's like, okay, but trans education in medical school is actually very, very new. Like very new. Like it wasn't even required up until very recently for people to even learn about trans people and transition in medical school. One of the things that trans people often find, it's hard to even find like a proper endocrinologist, which is a hormone specialist, to even do the transition. So it's like you're citing all these medical professionals when half the medical world doesn't really know what it's doing. People are just basically running into the dark with this. And that's what's scary because kids' lives are on the line, you know? And I've never been the person who's like a child advocate fighting for the kids. Kids are our future. But that story alone that you talked about was on my Twitter the other day. The kid went on hormones at 12, decided at 14 it was a mistake, and it's like, cool. Like that kid just missed out on 2 years of development. Who knows what's going to happen because of that? Yeah. So it's like playing with people's lives.
So in a case like that, so you have a 12-year-old that is identifying as trans, what you would then want is for them to do all the psychological work. You would want them to be fully accepted by their family and friends and all those things, but basically just wait on any hormones or anything like that until, is it when puberty's done, or do you think it should be 18? Like, is there a number associated with that for you, where you think, okay, well, now's the moment, or is that individual?
Well, that's what's difficult as well. I mean, bare minimum 18 for me. I wouldn't really go higher than that. I think when you're an 18, you're an adult, and for better or worse, you kind of have the ability to mess up your life. If that's the case, or make it amazingly better. My life. I don't ever want to frame transition as like something that's like completely negative. Like it's opened my life up entirely. I would never go back.
I don't think you do that at all.
Yeah. But it is something that's also very serious, and it changes the entire course of your life. So the idea that kids are making that decision is, I think, very problematic.
Yeah. So there's an interesting money piece around this, and you've talked a little bit about that you don't want the government paying for people's transitioning first, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that's something. I mean, at the end of the day, it is to alleviate gender dysphoria, which is a disorder, but it's all cosmetic in a way too. You know what I mean? Like, I just had surgery. I'm only like a month and a few days out of surgery, and everyone's story is different, but I worked hard to save up for it, and I paid for it myself, and didn't go through any like insurance or government or a sugar daddy or anything like that.
So this was fully paid for.
Yeah, and I wanted to do it that way because I felt like I don't want to, live my life and look back and like remember someone else footing the bill. You know what I mean? It's my thing, it's my life, and it just feels better that way. But again, that's me.
Yeah, so this is interesting then. So as someone that, again, you lean right, so I don't know what your feelings are on universal health care per se, but if we're identifying gender dysphoria as a disorder, if someone was to have gender dysphoria, how could a health insurance company not have to pay for it? I'm going a little insider baseball here with you.
Yeah, I mean that's completely true. I think it's about first of all, we have to learn how to actually diagnose gender dysphoria properly, because so many people get diagnosed, they don't really have it. Like, they just don't. So that needs to be the first thing. And then,
meaning what? Then what do they have? They're just struggling with their sexuality or other identity issues? Or?
Yeah, a lot of the times another interesting piece of this is that trauma, like emotional trauma, psychological trauma, or physical when you're younger, if you're someone who went through a rape or was beaten, can sometimes manifest that way. I read a story the other day of a kid who was raised by a really abusive mother, and the mother one of the ways that she would abuse him was she would call him by a female name and make him wear dresses and stuff.
Wow.
And as he got older, he had gender dysphoria, what he thought was gender dysphoria, because he didn't really know how to identify with his gender because his abusive mother was like confusing the hell out of him. And he went and he transitioned and he did everything, like every surgery you could do, hormones, everything. And at the end was like, oh wow, this isn't me, I'm not comfortable. So there's a lot of gray areas with this that I feel like people just don't pay attention to.
Yeah.
Which again is why it's scary that kids are on the line for this.
Yeah. Well, it just goes to how poorly we are about debating really complex issues, and I would put this at sort of, this deals with so much at sort of an existential level and a biological level and everything else.
Yeah.
This should be something that really we should be debating from the most educated place, and I think we do a horrible job of that.
We do a horrible job. I don't even do the best job. It's hard, you know. There's, like I said, there's so many gray areas, and there's so many, like, for instance, there is the American College of Pediatrics, I believe it's called. A lot of people cite them as a good source. They're not actually pediatricians. They just have the name. And a lot of people cite like a lot of really anti-trans stuff from them.
Wow.
And it's not a real source. And people really go hard with that. So it's like, there's just so much. It's just a mess.
Yeah.
That's why I said I think it's almost better, like, when people didn't really know what it was. Because there was the few doctors that could do it, and it's like, if you needed it, 0.1% of the population, it's fine. But now it's like, oh, everyone's involved, everyone has an opinion, and it just makes it harder.
Yeah, it's such a symptom of what's going on in a bigger way in society, of just everyone having an opinion about everything. Now, I know we're all for the free speech thing, so these people should be allowed to say whatever they want, of course, and encourage. But just this endless opinion machine on things that people don't know about. I think a great example of that is when Trump made this proclamation about the trans ban, and you were the first person. I quickly jumped on Twitter. All right, who can I try to make some sense of this thing from? What was your basic take on it?
I think you and I had a similar opinion at first. I don't know if you changed yours. I kind of shifted mine. But initially I was like, why? You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't make sense. But
why pick the fight?
Yeah, why pick the fight? Why is it important? I think there's like a very small amount of trans people in the Army. There's never really been an issue. But it also took me, like, I'm just some prissy tranny from California. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know about how the military works or anything. It took me kind of looking at like, oh wow, there's actually, like, basically if you stub your toe the wrong way, you can't join the military. So of course, if you have like gender dysphoria, something that's like that debilitating, like maybe you shouldn't be at least on the front lines. For me, I felt like banning trans people from every, position in the military was kind of a little overkill. But I can understand the front lines thing for sure.
Yeah.
Did you change your opinion at all? What do you think?
Well, I tried, and you sometimes fail on Twitter, but I tried to tweet out a few different thoughts that I was having, because I wasn't feeling like I fully understand this. And sort of what you're saying, it's like, I'm not in the military also. So for me to pretend that I know everything about protocol and what it's like to be on the battlefield or in a housing unit with a bunch of soldiers and all of those things. So I tried to look at what some military people were saying, people like you, a few other people that I generally respect. I mean, my feeling is that if you have transitioned, so first off, there's the argument about the money, right? So I don't think the government I don't think the military should have to pay for your transition. That's just what I feel. That's my more libertarian side coming out. But that's, okay, so all right, so we got one there. The other part, though, is that if you have passed every psychological test, if you've transitioned and now you've passed every psychological test that they would apply to everyone else, well, I do believe in equal opportunity. So at that point, I would argue it's probably irrelevant whether it's combat or anything else. But I also tweeted a list of things that there was a guy who's a military guy, did you see that, who tweeted out like a 20-string tweet about the pressures of being on the battlefield. Yeah. And he was making it clear that he's not against trans people in any way. He was just saying if there's an extra element of psychological issues there, that it could complicate things. I just thought it was an interesting take, and then of course I got a lot of hate for even sharing it.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I said just read this with an open mind. That's all I was really saying. So, but yes, the point is that it goes to one of those things where it's like, man, this is complicated as shit.
It is. It is. One of the main concerns I had with the whole situation was just finding out and making sure that the trans people who already were in the military didn't lose any like VA benefits afterwards, because that's really crappy to like serve your life and then leave and it's just like you're dishonorably discharged and no benefits. That's crappy to me. But I'm not losing sleep over like not being able to be drafted now, so that's great. You know what I mean? Like, I'm cool with that.
Right.
But
there you go. That's pretty good. Guys, by the way, we are going to do Patreon and Super Chat questions after about an hour with Blaire. We're going to jump in and let you guys do that. So you can put questions on Patreon and on Super Chat right now. Let's talk a little bit, let's move away from trans stuff. Have we done it?
Sure.
For now? You think, did we miss anything? You feel,
we're good.
feel like we got it? Okay, good. Some of the other political stuff. So you describe yourself as leaning right, and you obviously have a libertarian piece of you. What else does that mean if you say I lean right?
Right. Well, I hold some leftist views as well. You know what I mean? Like, I think you and I both agree on the traditional, free speech. I think that's still defined as like a leftist thing. Well, I was
Not
saying
really.
I was saying the other day, maybe like we aren't all moving right. Maybe everything's just moving left. I think that's actually the case.
That everything else is moving left or something, or that left has
everything
gone
else is
so
moving.
far, we're all kind of...
Yeah, the world has moved left. You haven't moved right. Maybe that's the case. But when it comes to fiscal responsibility, when it comes to national security, when it comes to, just a lot of things. And so I definitely say I lean right. But I also don't fight for any team. You know what I mean? I'm not rooting for any team. I speak for myself. I analyze each issue and situation and come out with what I think.
Yeah. Does that put you in an interesting position because it kind of opens you up from hate for everybody? Like, I'll see people be like, Rubin's a secret Republican conservative, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, if that's true, or he's far right, he's alt-right, all this crazy shit. It's like, if that's true, well, then I guess those guys are okay with gay marriage. They're okay with someone who's pro-choice. There's someone who's pro-legalization of marijuana, who doesn't want a nation build, for euthanasia. I mean, a gajillion, for strong public education, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely does, because first of all, you can never please everyone. And we live in such a divisive time. I mean, look at Tomi Lahren. Like, she took one step outside of, her team with the, what was it? The abortion comments on The View. And like, she lost everything. She's doing good now, which is great.
Yeah.
But she lost everything. So we live in a time where people are all playing by the book and fighting for teams, which really has never been my style, which is fine because I'm on YouTube and it's independent and it's fine. You know what I mean? I don't have anyone who's going to fire me.
Right.
Knock on wood again.
Yeah.
Keep jinxing myself.
Yeah. You want a piece of wood that we could just put maybe a little
just
closer
ready.
to you? That way, that would be better. You could just keep it in your pocket all the time and just constantly be doing that. I actually don't know your feelings on abortion. Did you agree with the premise of what Tomi was saying?
I go so back and forth on abortion. There's a small part of me that's like, oh my God, I'm trans and I have to deal with it. I almost don't want to talk about it. But I do, obviously have views on it.
I will not accept that as an answer.
Yeah, I know. I'm definitely pro-life with the exception, just as a general rule, pro-life with the exception of incest and rape, kind of the basic thing. You know what I mean? I think that if you don't have to have an abortion, you shouldn't. But at the same time, it's that libertarian in me. I'm not trying to tell someone what they should do with their bodies. Just for me, a moral decision would be, if I could get pregnant, would be that I would be pro-life unless I got raped or had an incest situation.
Yeah. It's one of those things that's so complicated, and that's why when I see these idiots screaming at each other, it's like no one hates women and no one hates babies. It's like one is trying to protect life in that sense, and one is trying to protect the woman. So for someone like you that has that libertarian bent, though, if you were going to... And we're totally just spitballing this, obviously, and we didn't discuss any of this stuff that we were going to talk.
Yeah, we're fine.
That if you were, as a pro-life person, what would you do then if a woman, let's say a 16-year-old girl gets pregnant, it's an accident, whatever, she has no support or anything, do you think the government has any role? If the government's not going to allow her to have an abortion, do you think the government has any role then in helping that child, helping her, et cetera?
I'd say so. If we're going to keep it illegal, then there needs to be some type of recourse. I mean, you can't just have dumpster babies. I mean, it sounds so horrible, but that's kind of the reality of what happens. Is like, if someone can't take care of a baby, literally cannot, and has no family, those kids end up in dumpsters. Those kids end up dying. Those kids end up, with malnutrition. So that is a thing. Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that. Basically, like, yes, in most cases, I would like either their community or their church or mosque or whatever it is to help take care of them. But this is one of the places where I think if the government's going to say, no, you can't do this, then at some way the government is sort of responsible. So it's one of those places where all of us have these sort of political ideas, and yet the rubber meets the road, and then you got to kind of figure out what you really believe.
And I'm such a, individualist that whenever I hear a question like, what do you think of abortion, I automatically put it back to myself, what I would do. So obviously what I would do is, not have an abortion, but it's a wide world out there, a lot of different situations. So I'd agree there should be recourse if it's illegal.
Yeah, I like that you just said the phrase individualist, because I think, I mentioned the LGBTQ thing before, that because I'm a little older than you, that even though I was closeted for a long time and I never really felt that I was part of the gay community, whatever that is, I always liked basketball, I'm a horrible dancer, I just never really felt in it like
Same.
that. Yeah, you like basketball?
Oh, no. I meant to say I never fit in with the LGBT community.
Are you a good dancer?
Kind of.
I dance basically like Cosby, which these days is particularly weird. It used to be like kind of corny and fun. Now I dance like the greatest serial raper of all time. It's like,
okay, we have to go out one of these days then, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. But the idea that the LGBT community, whatever you want to call that, has lost some of the individualism is actually very sad to me. That I used to live in West Hollywood, which is basically the gayest place on earth. There are rainbow crosswalks, truly. I mean, it is the gayest place. And that the community has sort of succumbed to groupthink. Even when gay people weren't treated equally, there was a very cool rebel streak. I think Milo actually makes this point really well. There was like this sort of subversive, like cool, yeah. And I think they've traded it, I suppose, for equality, which is, of course, is great. Important under the law, but it
loses a little spice.
Do you see that too, even with the trans community? I hate the word community too. Yeah.
I know, but it is a community, really. I mean, even if I'm not a part of it, it is a community. I've never felt a part of it. I've always felt there's a lot of problems, particularly, I can't really speak to the gay community. I've had a lot of gay friends, but I've never been like super involved in that sector. But when it comes to trans people, there's so many problems with that community. So much sex work, so much disconnect from family, no family values in that community, really. And so that's always been a problem for me. I've never really been able to relate to other trans people. Every once in a blue moon, I meet one that's like down to earth and normal and fine. Not that I'm like the most normal person, but I've never felt at home in that community or the LGBT community. I've been to a million gay and trans and lesbian functions. Always felt like the black sheep, not in a negative way, like, oh, these people are bad or whatever, but it's just never been my tribe. You know what I mean?
We should do some sort of we should do like a get together for like the black sheep LGBTers. That's a party that I could actually probably have fun at. You know what I mean?
Probably. It's always been kind of a thing for me, and for a long time I was like upset by it, like that I couldn't relate to them, and I feel like something's wrong with me. But then I look at the state. And it sounds like I'm like just trash talking the trans community, but I guess I kind of am. I look at the state of where that community is, and it's like, why would I want to fit in with that? I mean, I don't have anything against sex work per se, but it's very depressing to be around a bunch of people who feel like the only thing they can do in life is sex work. That's like their only course of action, because the truth is it really isn't. I mean, there's issues and there's a severe unemployment problem in the trans community, but we're not at this place of like trans people can only have sex for money. Yeah. And I just don't like being around that, honestly.
Yeah.
I sound like an uptight Christian woman, but
where's your cross, lady?
I don't. It's just not fun to be around, honestly. Yeah. Just a different lifestyle.
All right, let's take a big jump.
Big jump.
Islam. You talk about Islam. That makes a certain amount of people not like you.
Yeah.
When I've watched your videos on Islam, I think you do a pretty good job of making a distinction between a set of ideas and a group of people, and that we shouldn't be prejudiced towards people, but we're allowed to criticize ideas.
You have to.
That doesn't get through to a lot of people, though.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. So obviously, as a trans person, I have a huge problem with Islam. I would have a huge problem living in any Islamic country.
Is there one you could openly, the way you would want to live, that you know of? There's about 40 or so.
I don't think being trans, because even Dubai, like that's supposed to be like the liberal haven of the Muslim world, and even there's a lot of problems. There's a YouTuber named Gigi Gorgeous who like was stopped at the airport, couldn't even enter the country, was like detained. So it's like, well, you can't go to Dubai, like where can you go? Certainly not Saudi Arabia.
Wasn't there even a heterosexual couple that was kissing on the beach in Dubai and got arrested? I mean,
really?
Yeah, so it's not quite,
it's okay.
There are other problems too.
Yeah, clearly.
For the liberal haven.
Yeah, clearly. So, but even more so than like religion, I focus on culture, and I would never want that culture to become something that's super prominent here, because that wouldn't be in my best interest, you know what I mean? Or anyone's best interest, women's best interest, men's best interest. A lot of people talk about women in the Muslim world as you know, as victims, which they are. You know, I get a lot of just insane messages from women and LGBT people in the Middle East. But I also get a lot from men who feel like they're trapped as well. Everyone's in a very strict role there.
Yeah.
So it would be in no one's best interest for that to be here.
Yeah. So what makes the left go so defensive on Islam and so offensive on Christianity?
Because they're brown. They think they're brown.
They think.
They think.
Because there are plenty of white Muslims too.
There's plenty of white
brown
Muslims.
Christians.
Absolutely. So that's a huge misconception on the left's where I think they fight so hard which is why they call, you know, people who voice concerns about Islam racist, because they associate that with brown people. And apparently if you're brown, you have to have all these, you know, 20-year-old white saviors jumping to your rescue.
If you could only have more purple-haired girls at colleges defending you, then everything would be okay.
Right. It's because they're brown, honestly. It's really that simple, I think.
Which then, as I've said many times, is the actual definition of prejudice.
Absolutely.
Because you're prejudging people based on their color.
Absolutely, because you think of, you know, when it comes to Christianity, like the slightest problems with Christianity, which there are some, but not really that many anymore, they'll jump on that. Like the gay cake situations all the time that pop up sometimes. You know, that'll be like the end of the world.
Yeah. Where were you on the gay cake thing, by the way? Just as a sidebar.
I didn't care. I didn't care. It was the stupidest thing in the world. Whenever that pops up, it's like, but what I didn't like is that these small shop owners just get their lives ruined over it. And it's just like media attention to the extreme, and like their shops get shut down and they lose their livelihoods. That's horrible. But another one of those like petty disputes, I can't care about that too much, you know?
Yeah, I'm guessing you were probably basically with me on that, which would be that I don't want the government telling a private company to offer a specific service. I wouldn't demand that the government tell a Jewish painter to be forced to paint Holocaust imagery if someone commissioned them to do it. So it's sort of, it's a sucky thing. It kind of sucks. Like, doesn't feel right, but
yeah, it doesn't feel right. It's not to say that that's like the kind of the Christian thing to do, to turn someone away, but what people don't talk about is a lot of these activists go to places like that. They go to Christian bakeries because they want to start something. They want the media attention. They want something to fight for. So that's messed up.
Yeah. All right, so here's what we're gonna do, guys. We are gonna take questions with Blaire in about 5 minutes. Again, we're doing it on Super Chat. We're doing it on Patreon. There are roughly 4 jillion of them already. Can you do all 4 jillion of them?
I can do all 4 jillion.
Or 4 jillion, that's a lot. All right, but so sort of one last thing that I wanna make sure we get to in case we don't get it to questions. So you did, just as you said, just about a month ago, you underwent several other surgeries, which you were very open about. There's a video on your channel where were you holding the camera in that one?
Yeah, I was.
So you're holding the camera and you've got the bandages all over and you're talking about, so can you just describe a couple of the things that you underwent during that
I'll describe all of them.
Yeah.
I got my breasts done. I got my breasts done. I got my forehead basically reconstructed. Biological males have a ridge on their forehead. They also have a higher hairline and just more space in between the eyebrows and the eyeball. So I got all of that changed. My eyebrows lifted, my brow bone shaved, my hairline lowered, and I also got a rhinoplasty. So just those 3 things, and from there, like, I'm done with my transition, which is like an amazing feeling to have it done at 23. It was probably, not even probably, it was the most intense thing I've ever been through. Yeah. The most pain. I had 40 staples that went all along my head, like to the back of my ears. Nose job was fine. Nose job didn't hurt that much. The breast hurt a lot. Felt like an elephant sat on my chest. So I'm just glad to be mostly healed. I'm still a little swollen, honestly. I was probably advised to like not get back to like being on camera yet, but I had to.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible to me after watching that video, and I was looking at it going, wait a minute, this was only a month ago, and then I knew you were going to be here today, and I've seen pictures of you since then and all that. I was like, holy cow, I mean, the human body is actually an amazing thing. It can feel...
Absolutely. I mean, I was literally like sliced open, like the way they do it. Do you want to get really graphic?
Let's go.
The way they do it is, so they make an incision all along, like I said, to the back of your ears. They peel your face down, and then they, like, it's almost like medieval feeling. They saw the bone down. So I was like Leatherface.
How afraid were you? Either that something could actually go wrong, which I'm sure does happen sometimes, or that you know, you could look at, now you're in LA, I mean, you're going to walk around and see all these women all the time, and plenty of men now too, actually, with, you know, plastic surgery gone wrong, that are having far less done than what you just did. How worried were you when you finally took that last gasp of the gas or whatever when they put you under?
I wasn't worried, honestly, because like, I'm not dumb, and like, I did my research and I made sure who I was going to was a great doctor. So I had faith in him, but of course you go through like the freak out like the night before. Like, I vlogged and I was like crying. I was like so scared because it was my first surgery, but it was also something that was really important to me. So I got through it, and it improved my life exponentially. Exponentially. Like, I feel just so much better about myself, and like everything's just kind of, I can breathe. It's great.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, it's like the aura of what you're talking about. It's coming through for sure. So you said those are the last surgeries. Now, you did not have bottom surgery, correct?
No.
And what's your reasoning on that?
There's a lot of reasons why I haven't gotten it done. If I could have like a fully functioning, like perfect vagina out the womb, great, I would do that. But when it comes to that surgery, it's so much money. It's tens of thousands of dollars. It's a lot of risk. Like, it's a very risky surgery. It's the best it's ever been.
It's risky in terms of actual life, or is it risk just in terms of
not like death,
other...
but like complications.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you can lose the ability to orgasm, which, I mean, that's like really important in life, is orgasming.
You're down with the orgasms?
I'm down. And also, the recovery time is extreme. It's like a year of recovery, and it's really intense recovery. It's like the worst, like way worse than what I did. And I don't have the downtime to be like just like in my room for a year healing. Like, it's just it's not for me. So I'm comfortable with how I am now, and I'm just done.
Yeah. All right. I think we're going to move on to some audience questions.
Oh, God.
How'd I do? I think I did all right for this.
You did great.
Right?
How'd I do?
Yeah. You did great, too. Do you want to even pause, or should we? Oh, you know, we are going to pause for 30 seconds. I'm going to refill your water. All right, guys, one more time. Questions on Patreon, questions on Super Chat, so load them up right now. Give us 1 minute for a little water and check on the dog, and we'll be right back. All right, guys, we're back with Blaire White. How's your leg?
It's good. It was so dead before we paused. It was like, ugh, it's horrible.
All right, we had you get up. We did a little stretching. Okay,
Yeah.
we're good to go. All right, there's a zillion things here, so let's just jump right in. From Patreon, how difficult has the trans community been with her, given many of her views that run counter to the general position they hold? We talked about this a little bit, but have you gotten like any particularly like really hateful stuff from trans people because you talk about the things that you talk about?
Absolutely. If you just search up like Blaire White trans on YouTube, I feel like there's a million videos from trans people who are just like trashing me, which is fine. Ton of threats, ton of like, if you show up at this event, we're gonna do this. It's crazy. But a lot of the trans activists that aren't even actually trans, or just activists who fight for trans people because that's like their fight.
Yeah.
They're the worst, though. They're the worst.
That's interesting because Brett Weinstein at Evergreen State was telling me that sort of same thing. He never feared violence from any of the black students, but he feared violence from the white students because they were the ones that had to really prove how pro-black or whatever that they really were, which is really kind of fascinating. Super chat, Dave, your beard is looking good. Hashtag no shave Dave. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, keep it.
Do you have all right, I think it's staying. Do you have a favorite subscriber, and would you ever consider doing a collab video with them?
Favorite subscriber?
A favorite subscriber. I think someone's trying to hint something to you.
Right. Probably just all my Patreon supporters, because obviously they go the hardest, you know, and they're the greatest. That would be cool to do a video like with all the Patreon supporters.
Yeah. How important is the Patreon thing to you? I don't even mean just financially, but just the fact that people are like, I'm voluntarily doing this. Like if half of them dropped, you'd probably still figure out a way to make videos, you know?
Yeah.
And yet they're voluntarily saying, take this and hopefully these ideas get out there. I think it's incredible.
Absolutely. I love them. I mean, the fact that another person would say this content and this person is worth this, even if it's $1, you know what I mean? It's very flattering.
Absolutely. All right, Patreon. What is your opinion on special rights and benefits for specific groups of people? For example, minorities have affirmative action, married people get a financial benefit, people with kids get tax breaks, etc.
Well, I'm looking forward to the tax breaks. I want to get married, so let's maybe keep that. Affirmative action, I feel like there was a time and place for that, which is now gone, especially for women. And then as far as like, if we can relate it to like the trans thing, a lot of the activists fight for special employment rights, like not being able to use the wrong pronoun in the workplace, which actually makes the trans person who's being employed a huge liability. Because then, like, who wants to hire someone who's like a financial? It's already bad enough for the trans community as far as unemployment, and they make it worse.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Are you pretty much in lockstep with Jordan Peterson on the pronoun stuff? Like,
right there.
He's not against trans. I've never heard him say one anti-trans person thing. Just don't tell me what I have to say, and certainly don't make it a law.
Absolutely. He's tweeted me and been very kind to me. He's not a hater of trans people. He just doesn't want to be told what to say, which is like the bare minimum in life. Like, don't tell me what to say.
Right. Super chat. Are gay traps also straight?
Oh my God, that's like.
Can you explain what that means?
That's almost mathematical.
Yeah,
like,
can you
let's
explain
really
what
figure
that
that
means?
out. Are gay traps still straight? Was the question?
Yeah. What do they mean by trap? So this is like a newer phrase, I guess.
Okay, so trap is like, it's like 4chan lingo. It's where it originated, I believe. It's like boys who dress up as girls and don't tell the person they're sleeping with. They're not trans, they're like traps. They're just like, you've probably seen the type around Hollywood. Like they're not trans, they're not making changes like that, but they're just like, they're trapping people. It's just like super immoral and just like horrible. So traps are gay.
Because they're trying
Because they're just gay boys like dressing up as girls and tricking guys.
Right.
Traps are gay.
Makes sense to me. I'm a simple man. Super chat, combat vet here. I have seen war and can say with confidence that it is not the place for a group with a 40% lifetime suicide rate. Why create even more suicidal vets? Thanks for your candor and honesty. That's an interesting way of looking at it, that there are so many vets already with suicide problems. I don't know that I totally link that together before.
Right. I mean, I don't think there's any data to see if that like compounds or something, or if it's like put together. You know what I mean? But again, I much prefer to hear from people like that than to sit here as like I said, a prissy tranny from California talking about like, oh, military stuff. Like I take that with more than a grain of salt for sure.
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, you say the word tranny, and I know that a certain amount of people are, you know, freaking probably while watching this, but you're just trying to own the word, right? I mean, I don't, or even anything. I don't even know that you're even.
I think it's a cute word. I think it's a funny word. I don't mind it.
Fair enough. We touch on this a little bit, but maybe you have like an anecdote or something. What does your family think of your videos? So we talk about the way your family thinks of you. So yeah, that's a good question.
Of my videos, they don't talk about it much. Like I said, my family's big, and most of them are very liberal, so it's probably just a topic they don't want to talk about. But one thing you learn about when you start YouTube or you start doing videos or public stuff is that everyone you know and you've ever known watches it. Like everyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You kind of don't expect that, but everyone watches it. I've never had any like negative backlash from actually, no, that's a lie. I had a cousin who blocked me on Facebook like 2 months ago because she was saying she doesn't want anyone to think she's a fan of me because she hates my videos or something. I was like, oh, that's so mean.
Wow.
But other than that, it's been fine.
In a way, there's something kind of good about that because it's like she probably was okay with you being trans. She doesn't like your political ideas.
Yeah.
So, although that sucks, and I talk about why that's wrong all the time, blocking people over that, but there's something kind of funny in that. It's like, I'm okay with you as a human, can't take your political views, whatever. Super chat, long live freedom of speech. Okay, I think we both agree on that. This is good because we touch on this right at the end from Super Chat. What kind of psychological benefits does the appearance change and surgeries have on you? And are there any detriments? How do you decide you were stable enough? So you made it pretty clear, like that you really feel like yourself now. You feel good about what just happened and all that.
Right.
But were there any detrimental side effects to that or anything?
Like afterwards, like changing how you look, was there detrimental side effects?
Yeah, I think like any level of regret or anything. Or...
No, I was hit pretty hard with like a post-surgery depression, which is very normal no matter what you're getting done. So there was like a few days where I was like, oh my God, what did I do? Like, this is so painful. I don't know if I'm gonna like how it looks at the end, but it's completely changed my life now in only positive ways. Like, I feel more confident. I'm okay with like the camera hitting me from whatever angle because I know that like I'm fine now on my face. So
you have no idea how many angles we're working with.
I know, you guys are getting me but it's been great.
Yeah. We did touch on this one a little bit before, but I don't know if we got an exact number. What do you think is the minimum appropriate age to talk to kids about gender dysphoria? Are parents justified in sheltering their kids from these topics?
I think they're completely justified. When I have kids, I'm definitely not going to be talking about all this stuff with them until they're very old. Obviously, the trans thing is going to come up because they'll be able to Google me or whatever. But I don't see any reason why anything beyond teaching kids to be kind to people regardless of who they're interacting with. I don't see why you should go past that. I think when they get a little older and they hit puberty and start learning that the boys in their class sometimes are going for the other boys or whatever, then it's like appropriate. But when it's like little kids, just don't confuse them. I'm
curious, have you ever been approached by any of the LGBT organizations or GLAAD or Human Rights Watch or any of those?
Of course not.
So I want people to really understand that because I was always ignored by all of them when I was doing my thing too. Because even though I wasn't fully where I am now and as clear in my beliefs, I wasn't there. Yeah, and I was always ignored by them, and I'm ignored by them now, which I don't even care about. But I think people should really understand that you, because you're an individual who thinks what you think, they will never, this group, this sort of umbrella group that controls a lot of the gay thought out there.
You'll never see me at an HRC red carpet, at a GLAAD red carpet, never. I don't mind it. Even with YouTube, like I see YouTube promoting trans YouTubers who, it's not about size, but are much smaller, like 1,000 subscribers. Simply because they're maintaining the narrative they want them to maintain. The videos aren't even that great. And again, not that my videos are amazing, but
no, but your videos are great, and your audience loves them, and you get huge numbers and all that. So that does show you how this diversity memo that we've all been talking about with this James Damore thing at Google and all that, how that has seeped into all of these companies. Why can't YouTube promote one of your videos if they're doing something about trans people? I mean,
right. And I guess I can understand certain videos. Like, you don't have to promote the ones where it's like, me with blood on my face talking about how trannies get beat up for tricking men or something. You know what I mean? Like, not that one. But like normal ones, like my transition video, why not? Everyone else does it that's trans. But I'm not losing sleep over it. I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah. All right, guys, reminder, we are taking questions on Super Chat right here on YouTube. We're also taking questions on Patreon. And here we go. Do you feel that having so many different labels in the transgender community helps or hinders the idea of gender diversity? For example, does it open the doors to free sexuality, or does it create more barriers? What do they mean by so many different labels in the transgender community? Are there labels that I may be missing within the community itself?
I think so, because they do like the non-binary thing and the agender thing, and there's just a lot of different terms floating around, and it creates barriers for sure. I mean, that's just kind of how the human mind works. We categorize people, and we find our tribe, and if you start splitting the tribe even smaller, it's like then it's just a bunch of people who are in their own little bubbles. It does create division. It doesn't bring people together at all.
Do you think it also just causes exhaustion? I talked a little bit about this with Lacey Green, that when you get something to the point where you have to label every little person's feelings about every little thing,
it only divides so much.
That I think the average person is just like, fuck this. Like, I don't need to, I'm not even going to talk about this.
Right.
What's the point?
Right. Like, you and I's audience, like, we're very involved in all these conversations, but when it comes to real people, like, you can't just walk to 7-Eleven and start talking about non-binary and shit. Like, it doesn't compute. It's not real life. That goes back to me saying I don't appreciate being like expected to suspend my belief of how the real world works. So it's like, it's almost tiring talking about it.
That being said, you are pretty upset about the amount of non-binary cashiers at 7-Eleven these days, right?
Right, there's just so many.
It's just.
There's so many. It's getting out of hand.
It's just sickening. Super Chat, hi Blaire, what are your thoughts regarding passing as it relates to politics around trans issues? Also, apparently, Jazz is getting surgery, I read. So is that news to you?
Well, good for her if she found a surgeon. I just know that there was like a struggle, which is crazy.
That's interesting, the passing as it relates to politics. I guess the way you could relate that is that Caitlyn Jenner, because she obviously had great surgeons, and some people it's probably just a little more
digestible.
It's digestible, but I didn't want it's that their features at the beginning may be a little more easy to transition with or whatever it is. That if she had come out on the other side looking very different or not passing, that perhaps she wouldn't have been as accepted as she was?
Probably, yeah. I mean, that's another way the human mind works. Like, we like to look at people, and especially when it comes to gender, we like to look at people and like know what they are. Because identifying gender is subconscious. You look at someone, you don't think. It's not like a thought, is that a man or a woman? It's like you see features and your mind automatically, it triggers and you know what they are automatically. So it is more digestible to have someone who just, what they are. Or even if you know they're trans, they look enough to where it's like they're normal looking. You know what I mean? So it is hard. And not everyone has access to surgeries or whatever. So you can be aware that it helps, but I don't think it's like that detrimental either.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm throwing in a bonus one for me because it's not on here. When it comes to just the general hate and just, okay, so these people go after you, and yes, a certain amount of people are going to go after you now because you're popular and all of those things. I know a lot of people say, oh, I don't care about any of that, I don't read any of that, but I really sense something in you, like, I really sense that you don't care at all.
No, I don't care because, again, it's not real life. It's like I have my boyfriend back in the green room, I have my mom I can go call if I need to talk to her, I have my family, I have a roof over my head. Why would I care? Why would I care?
Yeah.
As long as you're not putting your hands on me or like being crazy in public, which has really not happened that much to me, a few times, then I'm fine.
Yeah. I think we all need a little more of that in our lives, probably me included. Regarding puberty blockers, this is from Patreon, regarding puberty blockers and or hormone treatment for children, consent becomes an issue. Don't you think it makes more sense to wait until they have better executive functions relevant for consent as measured by objective criteria such as prefrontal cortex development rate, which would be white, gray matter of ratio of change, similar to those we already consider capable of consent? This would be about 14 to 16 years old on average, if I remember well. So I like the fact that was kind of technical, but basically saying that you need their own brains to be developed enough.
Yeah. I mean, just think back to yourself at 12. You think you really could have made a decision that impacts the rest of your life. You just can't.
I think of myself at 35. I was an idiot.
Right.
Wait till you get to 35, sister. You have no idea what you're in for.
I'm about to be 24. But yeah, I totally agree that they can't even properly consent. They can't consent to sex legally. They can't consent to drinking. They can't consent to driving. You really think they consent to changing their sex? It's crazy.
It's a really interesting thing. Are there any other trans YouTubers who think the way you do? That's interesting because there's definitely plenty that go after you. I see enough about that. Are there some that are on the Blaire train?
Yeah, one of the most interesting things about my channel is that I don't want to sound conceited, but because of my channel, there's been other trans people that have come out and been like, Blaire's the reason why I feel like I can say this.
That ain't conceited. That's just honest.
Okay, that's just honest.
Yeah.
So that's been really great for me just to see every once in a while a video will pop up from a trans person saying, so I've thought this all my life, but I didn't want to say it, but I saw Blaire talking about it and now I can. And I think that's great. You know what I mean? I think the more freedom to say what you want, the better, for sure. So there's a few, not a lot though. Obviously, I'm the minority in this community. So.
Yeah. And but there are there for sure. I mentioned that I had been at my brother-in-law's farm in Seattle, and it's sort of a communal farm, and he lives with a trans girl who was a gun advocate, and she was painting her.
Cool.
She was painting her gun locker pink while we were there, and she, hunts and does all kinds of other stuff. And it was during that whole thing about the army, and
That's awesome.
and that was one of the things I tweeted that day, which was like, I would much rather have this girl defending me than me. She knows a lot more
Right.
about guns and could probably live off the grid a lot longer than I could. So it's like,
Right.
what right would I have?
It's kind of like a misconception. People think transgenderism is political. It's really not. It's definitely outside of the political realm. People just politicize it. You know what I mean? So that's why I've always said you can meet like a gun-toting tranny in Alabama or a green-haired feminist tranny in San Francisco. There is a lot of intellectual diversity, not as much as there should be, because a lot of people do feel pressured to align more with the green-haired San Francisco tranny. But
Right.
it's
It's
getting
almost
better.
like we shouldn't judge as individuals and not as collectives.
Almost like that.
Boy,
you know?
it really makes you think. All right, guys, we are still on Patreon and Super Chat. Here we go. For both of you, which community has been the most hostile, least accepting of you? As a bi-libertarian man, my Christian conservative friends have been very accepting. The gay community, the least. You want me to field that one first?
Sure.
So I find lately, especially, I'm finding that the conservative Christian community has been absurdly open. I think they've sort of gotten, not to say there aren't some people using scripture in a bigoted way, but even when I was on vacation, I met these Christian conservatives that could not have cared less, and they wanted to know if I was a
Right.
good person and all that. I think right now, for all the things that I believe in, I get more flack. I get way more from just the so-called tolerant left than on the right. People don't. I get invited to all these. I'm speaking tonight at a libertarian thing at a college outside of LA, and it's like Claremont McKenna, and it's like these are supposedly scary right-wingers.
They're supposed to be your enemies.
Yeah, and they're inviting the gay, married, pro-choice, pro-weed guy to come talk to them. So who is intolerant? What about for you?
Absolutely. I completely relate to that. I didn't expect it to be that way, though. It took me making my YouTube channel to kind of understand that, like, it is kind of a new thing, but it's there that people care more about ideas than people, you know what I mean? Or than identities. So a lot of my hate, almost 98% of my hate, comes from people who fight for trans rights, which is so crazy to me.
Yeah. God, that's nuts. I mean, I would say 98% probably. That's probably the right number. For me, it's like I never get hate mail from people on the right go, gay marriage, pro-choice. I just don't. They go, we disagree with you. Or I've had people sitting in this very chair in my own home who told me they weren't for gay marriage, but I was okay with the conversation.
Yeah, yeah. Real life conversations are always so different too. They're better.
There you go. Would you be interested in talking to Ben Shapiro about transgenderism? I
would love to. I actually was doing a live stream a week ago, and I was saying how I would love to do a video with Ben Shapiro just talking about it. Not necessarily like a heated debate or whatever, but just going over it would be so interesting because we have similar views, but also radically different views when it comes to it.
You know what? Why don't I talk to Ben and we'll see if we can do it right here.
Hook me up.
I think, Ben's a good guy, and even if you guys won't make peace on that specific thing, I think there's a lot more that you agree with, and I know that you'd use that as a jumping off point. All right. Do you think that gender dysphoria is something that one is born with, or do you think it's a product and or rejection of one's environment?
I think it can be both. I think back at my life, and I remember being 4 or 5 years old feeling it. So to me, that feels like, wow, maybe I really was born with something, different in my brain, and that's why I had it happening. But like I said, there is events like trauma that can cause what feels like gender dysphoria or even gender dysphoria. So it can be both for sure.
All right, Super Chat. We got about 12 minutes left, guys, if you want to jump in on Super Chat or on Patreon. With LASIK eye surgery not being covered by most health insurance companies, it's rated the same as plastic surgery. Why is trans being pushed when there are others that benefit physical health? That's an interesting question.
I couldn't say. I guess when it comes to being trans, there's like the suicide aspect, and when it comes to just having bad eyesight, it's just having bad eyesight. I want LASIK, by the way. I have horrible eyes.
I knew you weren't done with your surgeries.
I am legally blind. People don't know that. I'm legally blind. I have contacts in right now, but without them, I wouldn't be able to see you. It's crazy. Yeah.
I had no idea. It's very passable. The contacts.
Thanks.
Very passable. Oh, this is really interesting from Patreon. Thoughts on TSA body scanners as it relates to trans men and women?
Oh, I have so much to say on that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've been flying a lot this summer. I have a boyfriend out here, so I've been going back and forth from where I live to LA, where he lives. And every single time I have ever flown in my life since being since transitioning, the scanner pops up my body and I have to get patted down. Every single time. I've never not had that happen. And it definitely is like super invasive, and it's like, because what happens is when you go up to TSA, the agent has to select male or female. So when I'm walking through, they select female. But then on the scanner, an anomaly pops up in the crotch area, which is, you know what I mean?
Right.
So every time I have to get patted down.
I call it an anomaly too, don't worry.
An anomaly.
Yeah.
So it's invasive, it's really frustrating. I understand that TSA is there to keep everyone safe, but it's like the worst thing in the world, because sometimes they're like rude about it and you're treated like you're a terrorist.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on.
Yeah.
I'm walking in like 6-inch heels, I'm not a terrorist. Like,
right. I mean, everyone hates TSA so much.
Yeah,
and so
hate
much
TSA.
of it is such the theater of the absurd that adding this into it, I can only imagine.
Last time it was the worst. Last time I flew, they took me to the back and everything, and they were like asking me questions. I was like, are you kidding me? I literally was just telling them, I have a penis.
Yeah.
I was just telling them, I have a penis. And
Yeah.
so it's frustrating, but.
Sort of is what it is, I suppose.
Yeah.
Patreon, even if sex is genetically defined, don't you think it makes more sense for sexual orientation to be based on a pattern of attraction based on what triggers it? That is, since we have no gene scanning vision, the secondary sexual characteristics of a person and overall masculinity, femininity instead of sex. Something there might have went over my head. Did you?
Same. That's kind of a confusing question.
Yeah. All right. You know what? If you can reword that one, maybe I just read it in a strange way.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's jump back to Super Chat. Blaire, how do you approach dating as a trans woman? Did you have to come out as trans after beginning a relationship? Do you have any advice for other trans women?
Advice would be just to be honest from the jump. Like before you even jump, when you're walking towards the jump, be honest.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to put yourself in a position where you can be hurt. You don't want to put the other person in a position where they're uncomfortable. Always just be honest. For me, never had a problem dating. Never had a problem finding people who are okay with it. Not that I've dated many people. I've had 3 relationships in my life. They've all been serious too. But dating, I've always met people through the internet, and so a lot of times we'll just Google Blaire White, and it's like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But just be honest always.
Yeah.
For sure.
I mean, I don't. We can only go as personal as you want to go, but I just met your boyfriend. Seems like a great guy. Does it bring up issues for the person that you're with?
Like as far as their family and stuff.
As far as family, you're right? Like that, he seems like a great guy, and obviously you guys are great together. But that, yeah, then the onus is suddenly on him to have to explain something to family and friends that he never had to explain before. Like it just compounds like a series of issues.
Yeah, it gets complicated. I've had good luck even with that. Like dating, like families have always been great. The cool thing about his family is that they're actually like fans of me, and they knew about me before we started.
That's the key.
So that's been like pretty cool. But that's also a unique position for me. It's not
Yeah.
the same for everyone, obviously. But I mean, his family's great, and they like me so.
So the main point of advice there is always date someone whose family is a fan of you.
Right. Start a YouTube channel.
Start a YouTube channel and get to it. I've seen a couple things about gender neutral pronouns. Anything specific on that you want to hit on?
People can want to be called what they want. I don't use them though, really.
Yeah.
It's awkward.
I think you're going to dig this one from Super Chat. Would you consider converting to Islam just to watch the progressives writhe from the conflicting tiers that you occupy on the social victim/enemy scale?
That'd be the biggest mind F ever anywhere. Like, that's crazy. No. Lindsay Lohan's a Muslim now. Did you know that?
I heard about it.
She's a Muslim now. It's crazy. I miss Mean Girls, Lindsay.
Do you know that, I've told the story a couple of times, but for about a year, I had Lindsay Lohan's iPod. I can't quite explain why I had it and how it got into my possession.
How?
I don't want to explain right now. I'll tell you later.
That's so crazy.
Because they would involve, I could get someone
What'd
in trouble.
What'd she listen to?
A lot of Britney Spears. Ton of Britney Spears.
I knew it.
This was about, I don't know, it was probably about 8 years ago. So like whatever Britney's peak was, it was right around then.
That's crazy.
A lot of Britney Spears, but I had Lindsay Lohan's iPod.
That's so cool.
Should assault rifles be banned?
I'm not for banning things. No, I'm not for banning things.
Fair enough. You sort of addressed this already, but maybe we can whittle it down a little bit. From Patreon, regarding military service, do you believe that people that are transitioning should be allowed on the front line? So I think there's a couple of questions here. So I think your answer was no, right?
My answer was I can understand the argument. I'm kind of with you that if someone passes all the tests, why not? But at the same time, I'm me. I'm not involved in the military, so
Right.
it's hard.
It's interesting the way the person wrote this because they said that are transitioning. So they didn't say have
like
finished
currently,
transitioning. Yeah.
Then probably not. That's probably even just like to their own benefit, not the best.
Right, because there could be then physical reasons that they're still going through things. Okay. And then it continues, my concern is that a frontline scenario and their potential reliance on hormone replacement therapy, that in a wartime scenario, they may not have access to those medications and risk becoming a danger in terms of trans suicide rates, which turn risks on their fellow soldiers and their altered mental state at the loss of to the hormone replacement therapy. That's interesting, that just in the cause of war, adding an extra element where you need certain medications.
If you're reliant on a medication like that, then I would say no.
Right. I mean, if you were on the front lines and you needed diabetes medication, that also complicates things.
Yeah. But then again, there's also so many gray areas because not all trans people are on hormones. It's all the gray areas we talked about.
Yeah.
So.
It's a lot. It's a lot. I love this one. This is from Facebook, actually. Teach me how not to care about other people's opinions, Blaire. We've hit this a couple times. Got any other bonus advice on that?
Sure. I would say stabilize your own life so you're not reliant on other people's acceptance. Because you can have people mad at you from every angle, but if you're living your life and you're supporting yourself and you're fine, then who cares?
Yeah.
Just do your own thing. It doesn't matter. You can't get caught up in that.
I like it. I think I'm gonna pre-say yes to this one. Can the two of you please have a meetup in LA? You're my two favorite YouTubers.
We should do a joint meetup. That'd be so cool.
All right, we will do a joint meetup. We will discuss the details of that privately. Super Chat, what is your opinion on the lack of right/libertarian arts and cultural output? Any current authors? The lack of right/libertarian output on arts.
Oh, maybe how art seems to mostly come from the left.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, it does. You look at media, you look at movies, music, all of that.
Yeah.
All of it comes from the left, really. That's why, especially being here in Hollywood, which is where it all comes from, we talked about how everyone here is a leftist, basically. I would say especially the people on the right should maybe get more monopoly on that. Same with, I just lost my thought. Oh, with social media, how we shouldn't, the right should make more social media outlets rather than also always relying on Twitter and stuff. Silicon Valley has like a stranglehold on all of that. So I think it's important to start diversifying that for sure.
Yeah, it definitely does. Are you enthused, though, at least how many libertarians or classical liberals, whatever it is, are on YouTube? Because you see all these people, young people get on YouTube, they start earning money, they start realizing what they want involved in their life or not. And I see so many of them actually shifting to libertarianism because of that. So that's at least enthusing, rather than just, we may not have enough artists yet.
Yeah, when it comes to YouTube, actually, libertarians and right-wing people and Republicans actually have a monopoly on YouTube. It's kind of crazy. Like if you look at leftist channels, they don't do as well, and they get a lot of dislikes. But again, that's not real life because, I can be on YouTube and see a lot of people saying what I would say and hold views that I hold. I walk down the street in Hollywood and it's completely the opposite. So
Hollywood ain't real life.
True.
Okay, I think they did reword their question. So to reword my previous question, do you think sexual orientation should be based on secondary sexual characteristics and noticeable cues instead of sex,
I know what
which is something we can't naturally detect unaided? This would make liking traps or people with the XY female syndrome not gay. Okay.
I know what they're saying.
Yeah.
They're basically saying like, is sexual orientation defined by secondary sex characteristics, which is like your face, your body, outward, rather than just genitals. And I would say that's actually kind of how it works. Like, if you look at, one thing I like to say when people think that it's like homosexual to be with a trans woman, it's like, well, it's not the straightest thing, not the gayest thing. But also that if you, you also, it's not the straightest thing, but it's not the gayest thing. Because you ask them, if you look at like a trans man, do you know who Buck Angel is?
I do know Buck Angel. I had interviewed him on my old LGBT thing on SiriusXM. Yeah.
Right. So he's a trans man, female to male transsexual, and has a vagina.
Yeah.
And
porn star. Yeah.
Successful porn star.
Yeah.
I don't think straight men are lining up to fuck Buck Angel. You know what I mean? Can I curse? I'm so sorry. That's the first time I cursed.
I think you want to do it again?
Okay, fuck. Yeah, straight men aren't lining up to fucking because he has a vagina. It's more about secondary sex characteristics, of which he has everything male secondary.
Right.
You know?
So I wonder, I mean, he probably knows, but who are the people that are mostly watching that then?
I don't even know.
What do those people identify as is kind of really interesting.
I don't know about trans men and their porn. That's actually really niche, I think. But when it comes to porn of trans women, what I do know is that that porn only exists on straight websites. In the beginning, when trans porn first started becoming a thing, they put it on gay websites and it didn't do well. They put it on straight websites and it just boomed.
That's interesting. This is going to sound completely amateur or something, but is there trans porn for guys that have fully transitioned, or at that point, why would you?
You mean like male to female, like at the end?
If you fully transition, bottom and everything, then at that point, what would be the purpose of watching porn of that person? So that's got to be a very, very niche thing.
If they like fully transition, they lose their stardom for sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But where you're at would actually be, there's plenty of porn like that. I mean,
there's plenty.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it though. I've been offered.
I'm not trying to convince you to become a porn star here.
Stop pressuring
that would be
Dave.
quite a way of doing it. Okay, we're going to do a couple more minutes here. Again, it's we're on Patreon, we're on Super Chat. Oh, and we're doing a rapid fire. I didn't even tell you, but you're sticking around for a rapid fire
Cool.
for patrons only, where I'm just going to plow through things that and you're just going to have to.
Right after the porn talk, I'm gonna plow.
Yeah, okay, and trust me, there's a lot of juicy stuff there. Okay, a couple people asked about your monetization situation. You already said it didn't hit you that hard, and you're sort of surprised by that, actually, right?
Yeah, I'm definitely surprised.
All right, we're gonna wrap up. Do we have one more here that I feel good about this? You feel good about this?
I feel great.
All right. In that case, all right. So here's what we're gonna do. We are gonna do the rapid fire on Patreon. We're going to do some sort of hangout in LA, and the four of us are going to do dinner. But that will involve no cam. You're okay with doing something with no cameras, right?
Yeah.
I don't need dinner on camera. That's my
double
thing.
date. Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure, and yes, we're doing rapid fire on Patreon. Thank you guys for watching. And and I just this morning taped an interview with Greg Gutfeld. It was really, really fun. Cool guy, and got an interesting perspective on a guy that's in mainstream cable news but gets the online world. It was really. It was fun to chat with them, so check that out tomorrow. And I'm at Claremont McKenna if you happen to be outside of LA tonight. All right, later.